You know that feeling when your mind just doesn't seem to work the way it used to? We've all been there, and it always leads to that one nagging question. Is this it? Is this the start of the decline? Or is something totally different going on? Well, today, we're going to dive into your brain's incredible and honestly surprising second act. And look, this question, it came directly from one of you, and it really gets to the heart of this huge, shared fear that maybe our sharpest years are already in the rearview mirror. It's a real concern, for sure. But today, we're going to push that fear aside and look at what the science actually tells us. And right here, this is the whole problem, isn't it? It's this myth, this story we tell ourselves that our brains are just on a long, slow, one-way trip downhill. But what if that story is completely wrong? I mean, what if we've been looking at this whole thing backwards?
Because these are the moments that feel like proof, right? You're reaching for a name and poof, it's just gone. Or you just feel like you're not thinking as fast as you used to. These things are real, and they are exactly why we start believing that our best days for learning and thinking are over.
Okay, so to really get what's happening, we need a whole new way of looking at it. Think of it like this, a tech metaphor. Your young brain was like your first operating system. Right out of the box, it was built for one thing above all else, just pure, raw processing speed. So you see, there's this fundamental trade-off. The young brain, it's all about raw speed, just soaking up facts and learning the rules of the game. But the mature brain isn't just a slower version of that. No way. It's a completely different machine, built for something else entirely, what we call systemic wisdom.
And let's be absolutely 100% clear on this, because it's the most important takeaway today. The shift you might be feeling, it's not a bug, it's a feature. This is not a story about your mind breaking down.
What's really going on is a process that cognitive science calls active remodeling. I love that term. It's not decay, it's a deliberate, functional change. Your brain isn't just fading out. It's literally rewiring itself, optimizing for a brand new set of tasks that draw on a whole lifetime of experience.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It completely reframes the whole experience. You're not losing your mind. You're not losing processing power. You are getting a massive hardware upgrade, one that completely changes how that power gets used.
So if you've gotten this big hardware upgrade, what's this new architecture actually good at? Let's talk about the advantages of this new system, because, believe me, they are powerful.
This upgraded brain of yours is just a different kind of thinking machine. It's way more complex, more interconnected. It's less about seeing the individual trees and more about seeing the entire forest. A younger brain might be great at memorizing facts, but this mature, remodeled brain, it sees the patterns between the facts. It connects the dots. It understands the big picture in a way that just wasn't possible before.
And that's the whole point. We've been judging our minds with the wrong yardstick. We get so caught up in mourning the loss of that youthful speed that we totally miss the incredible thing we're gaining, this deep, systemic wisdom. It's a trade-off for sure, but man, it's a powerful one.
Really, the whole point of this explainer is to give you that new frame, a new way to see your own mind, to stop looking at those little moments of forgetfulness as signs of failure and start seeing them for what they are, the side effects of a brain that's busy remodeling itself for a much higher purpose.
So if you only take one thing away from this, let it be these three things. Seriously, burn this into your memory. Number one, you are not in decline. Number two, you are in a state of active remodeling. And number three, you are gaining wisdom. That is the news story. That's the truth.
So let's end with this thought. This hardware upgrade is not something you have to wait for. It's happening right now. This incredible shift from speed to wisdom is the natural, powerful way your mind is supposed to work. So the only real question left is, what are you going to do with it?
So if you're over 50, chances are you felt it. That little nagging feeling that maybe, just maybe, your brain's best days are in the rearview mirror. But here's a wild thought. What if that feeling isn't about decline at all? What if it's actually about a massive hardware upgrade? Yeah, in this explainer, we're going to completely flip the script on how you think about your brain. I mean, this question, it comes from a very real place, doesn't it? You feel that little shift, a name slips your mind for a second, and you immediately start to wonder, is it too late for me? Has that window for learning slammed shut? Well, let me just say this right now. It absolutely has not. Not even close. All right, so first things first, let's tackle the biggest misconception head on, right? This is what I call the myth of decline. It's this idea that's everywhere, that feeling a bit slower automatically means the whole system is, just failing. And this myth, man, it's persistent. It tells us that from our 20s on, it's all just one long, slow slide downhill. We feel just a tiny dip in our mental processing speed, and we immediately jump to, well, that's it, game over. But here's the thing. That whole point of view is based on a total misunderstanding of what's really going on inside your head. Okay, so here's the big reframe. This is so important. Your brain isn't just fading away. It is actively and strategically remodeling itself. Think about that. It's upgrading its entire operating system to leverage all those decades of experience you have. So this isn't a bug, it's a feature, a really powerful one. So to really get what this remodeling is all about, we've got to look at the science a little bit. And it really boils down to two different kinds of intelligence and how they shift and change over our lifetime. It's this incredible move away from just raw speed to something much deeper, like systemic wisdom. Okay, so on one hand, you've got what's called fluid intelligence. The easiest way to think about this is like your brain's raw processing power. It's CPU speed, right? It's what's at its peak when we're young, and it's perfect for just brute force learning. But then you have crystallized intelligence, and this is your personal library. It's this huge, ever-expanding database of knowledge, patterns, and experiences you've built up over your entire life. And this is where it gets really interesting. There's this beautiful trade-off. See, while that fluid intelligence, that raw speed, does kind of gently decline after our 20s, our crystallized intelligence just keeps on growing. I mean, it can grow well into our 70s and even beyond. And this is the mistake so many of us make. We try to learn like we're 20 again, trying to use that raw speed, when our real superpower now lies in that incredible, massive library of wisdom. Okay, that all sounds great, but it brings up a big question, right? If our brain is actually getting wiser, why does learning sometimes feel so much harder? Well, it turns out there's a really fascinating biological reason for that. The answer is this process called compensatory scaffolding. And honestly, this is just amazing. See, when you learn something new now, your brain doesn't just fire up one little specialized area. Nope. Instead, it recruits help from all over the place. It's pulling in reinforcements from totally different regions to build a much stronger, more connected understanding of the new thing. It's literally building a scaffold to support that new knowledge. But, okay, there's a catch. Putting together that neural support team, building that whole scaffold, it just takes more energy. It is way more metabolically demanding. So that feeling of effort, that sense that it's harder, that isn't you failing. Not at all. That is the feeling of your brain doing more complex, more integrated, more impressive work. I love this because it just totally reframes the entire experience. That feeling of effort isn't a sign of failure. It is the mechanism of maintenance. It's literally the process your brain uses to maintain itself and forge new connections. It's actually a sign of a healthy brain doing exactly what it's supposed to do. All right, so let's recap. We've established your brain totally has the capacity, and that effort you feel, that's actually a good thing. So what's the real roadblock then? What's the thing that's actually stopping you? Well, it might not be what you think it is. Think about it. If your hardware is upgrading and the effort is just a normal part of the process, then what is really getting in the way when you try to learn something new? Like picking up a new language or trying to figure out some new piece of software. Well, the true villain actually has a name. It's called proactive interference. Here's a great way to picture it. Imagine your brain is a landscape with these really deep riverbeds carved into it over decades. Those riverbeds are your old habits, your established ways of thinking. When you try to learn something new, you're trying to carve a brand new path. But the water, it just keeps wanting to flow back into those old, familiar, easy routes. And that is the key insight. The difficulty you're having isn't about cramming new information into your brain. The real, true challenge is making space for the new stuff by consciously setting aside the old patterns that just don't serve you anymore. You're not struggling to learn, you're struggling to unlearn. Which brings us to the big takeaway of all of this. It is time to stop trying to run that old, outdated operating system. It's time to fully embrace the powerful new cognitive architecture that you have right now. So let's put this all together, wrap it up. It's time to just completely forget that old story you've been telling yourself or that other people have been telling you about aging in the brain. Because this is not a story of decline. No, it is a story of a brilliant, active remodeling process.
Your brain is being incredibly strategic, shifting its resources, becoming more efficient, more integrated, and it's using a lifetime of knowledge as its solid foundation.
You are, and I mean this quite literally, upgrading your hardware. You're trading in that simple, fast processor of your youth for a deeply complex, massively interconnected supercomputer. And this one doesn't just run on speed, it runs on a lifetime of wisdom and experience. So, the only question left is, what now? Your upgrade is already complete. It's installed, and it's running. So, what old assumption, what outdated habit are you going to unlearn first to make room for something new?
We're going to tackle a really big idea today. We're challenging a story that so many of us just accept as true. The idea that as we get older, our brains are just, supposed to decline. But what if that's not the real story? What if it's not about decline at all, but a massive upgrade?
Hey, does this sound familiar? It's a worry I hear all the time. You misplaced your keys, or you can't quite pull up a name and that little thought creeps in, is it too late? Are my best learning days behind me? If you've ever felt that, even for a second, then this is for you.
All right, so let's start by talking about this thing I call the myth of decline. It's this lens we're taught to see our own minds through, this idea of a slow, inevitable decay. And every time we have a little memory slip, it just feels like more proof that, it's all downhill from here. So on one side, you've got the myth, right? Decline, slower thinking, game over for learning. But on the other side is the reality that science is now showing us. And it's a story of active remodeling, where your brain is actually shifting into a totally different, and in a lot of ways, much more powerful way of thinking.
See, this isn't a story about loss. It's really a story about transformation. And there's this one classic study that just perfectly shows what's actually going on under the hood.
So let's talk about typists. You'd think that's a job that's all about pure raw speed and motor skills, right? Well, some researchers decided to put that exact idea to the test.
So they set up a matchup. In one corner, you've got the younger typists. Their fingers are super nimble, their raw reaction times are at their absolute peak. And in the other corner, you have the older, more experienced typists. Now, their fingers might be a tiny bit slower, sure, but they have a whole lifetime of words and patterns stored up in their brains.
So, here's the big question. Who do you think was actually faster? Was it the kids with the lightning-quick fingers or the veterans with all that experience?
And the result was pretty mind-blowing. They were just as fast, equally fast. Now, how on earth is that possible? If the older typist had physically slower reaction times, how in the world did they keep up? This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, let's pull back the curtain on the typist's secret, because it really reveals a fundamental superpower of the experienced brain.
It turns out it had almost nothing to do with how fast their fingers could physically move. The older typists were doing something else entirely. They were using their huge bank of experience with language to read further ahead, to anticipate entire words and phrases before they even had to type them. Their brain wasn't just working faster, it was working smarter. This is a powerful idea called relational learning. The older typists weren't just seeing individual letters. They were using their massive internal library of experience to see patterns. Instead of learning something new in a vacuum, the experienced brain anchors it to this huge, stable network you've spent a lifetime building. It lets you see connections and structures that a younger brain just can't.
And that leads to this next idea, compensatory scaffolding. Think about it. For the typists, all that knowledge of language acted like scaffolding, a support structure that let them totally bypass their slightly slower finger speed. Your decades of experience do the exact same thing for you. They create these incredible mental shortcuts to navigate complex problems with a kind of depth a younger brain simply can't access yet.
So what does all this mean for you right now? It means your brain isn't failing, it's not breaking down, it's developing a completely new architecture for thinking, a whole new system built on depth and wisdom, not just raw speed. And just look at the advantages of this new system. You've got this massive, stable network of knowledge to draw from. You have this incredible ability to see the bigger picture, to understand context. You've developed a sophisticated system for tackling really complex problems, and you can anchor brand new skills to everything you already know, which makes learning so much more powerful.
So if you remember one thing, let it be this. You are not losing your mind. You are upgrading your hardware. Just let that sink in for a minute. You're shifting from a simple, fast processor to a complex, deeply interconnected supercomputer. And that brings us to the final, and I think most empowering part of all this. It's about really leaning into and embracing this cognitive upgrade.
The whole thing can really be summed up as a fundamental shift from just raw processing speed to a deep systemic wisdom. It's about leveraging this incredible, powerful network that you've spent your entire life building.
I mean, think of it like this. A younger brain might be like a sports car that's super fast, but it's kind of stuck driving in first gear. Your brain, after 50, oh, you are no longer just driving in first gear on the highway. You are navigating the entire world with a sophisticated supercomputer that already understands the entire map.
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. Your experience is this vast, amazing, interconnected library. The question isn't, can I still learn anymore? The real question is, what new incredible piece of knowledge are you going to connect to it next?
All right, welcome everyone. Today we're talking about remodeling our minds. And no, I don't just mean learning a new trick. We're going to dive deep into how you can actually master the incredible new hardware your brain develops as you get older. So let's get right into it. This is probably the #1 question I hear, especially from folks in their 50s or 60s. You know the feeling. You have a tiny slip-up, you forget a name, and that thought creeps in. Well, that's it. The learning part of my life is over. But what if I told you that's not the whole story? Not even close. Okay, so first things first, we have to tackle the biggest obstacle in the room, and that's the myth of cognitive decline. It's this powerful story we've all been told, but it's just not what the science actually shows. And this quote just nails it, right? It feels so true. We all kind of share that fear. But the most important word there is myth. It's a flawed lens, and it's preventing us from seeing the amazing upgrade that's really going on under the hood. So let's just flip that script entirely. This is not a story about decline. It's a story about an upgrade. Your brain isn't failing you. It's shifting its entire operating system. It's going through a process called active remodeling. Think about it like this. When we're young, our brain runs on raw speed, like a super fast processor. But as we get older, it develops something far more valuable: systemic wisdom. It builds this complex, interconnected web for thinking. You aren't losing your mind. You are literally getting a hardware upgrade. And yeah, there's a scientific name for this whole process: active remodeling. This is your brain actively shifting gears, building a totally different kind of thinking system, one with its own unique advantages. You're not just getting older, you're building a brand new, more powerful architecture. So the big question is, how do we actually use this new hardware instead of fighting against it? Well, the answer is a really simple, practical framework called the pillar and playground model. This is the how-to for harnessing your brain's new superpowers. And it really just breaks down into 3 clear steps. First, you're going to choose your one deep learning pillar. Second, you'll create a playground for exploring. And third, you have to actively manage your energy. Let's break down each one. All right, step 1, the pillar. Now, this is the big one. This is your one single deep learning project. I'm talking about something complex you've always wanted to really get your head around. Maybe it's coding, or learning a new language, or really understanding finance. The goal here isn't to just dabble. It's to achieve something called serial mastery. And when I say this is the big one, I mean it. Your pillar project needs to get about 70% of your focused learning energy. Think of it like the main support beam for this new house you're building in your mind. This is your high-stakes, dedicated work. And now for the fun part. Step 2, the playground. To balance out all that intense focus on the pillar, you're going to pick 2, and this is important, totally unrelated skills where your only job is to be a complete and total beginner. This could be painting, learning to dance, picking up the ukulele, whatever. Now, don't skip this part because the playground is absolutely crucial. This low-stakes playing around is what restores your brain's agility. It forces you to create new pathways, and it shatters those old, rigid habits. It's where you get to explore without any pressure, and trust me, that fuels creativity everywhere else in your life. So let's just put them side by side for a second. The pillar is for high-stakes, deep mastery. The playground is for low-stakes, flexible agility. They're total opposites, but they work together perfectly. One builds depth, and the other builds breadth and creativity. And finally, step 3. Look, none of this works if you just burn out, right? So this last step is all about managing your energy.
It's the key that makes the whole system run. It's strategic cognitive resource management. This is really the nuts and bolts of making it all happen. There are two killer tactics here. First, you have to protect your morning peak. You know, that 2 or 3 hour window after you wake up when you're sharpest? That time is sacred. It's for your pillar work and nothing else. Second, you use a technique called microdosing. So what in the world is microdosing your learning? It's simple. You work in short, super focused 40-minute blocks. That's it. This lets you go really deep on a topic without frying your brain. And it makes your progress sustainable for the long run. It's all about working smarter, not just longer. You see, when you combine this new mindset with a practical framework like this, everything changes. You stop being a passive victim of aging and you become the active architect of your future. At the end of the day, this is all about taking back control. All the knowledge you're building, that's your library, and your library is your power. When you can step back and consciously design your own growth, well, you become the observer of your own mind, and that is an incredibly powerful place to be. So I'll just leave you with this question. With this new hardware and this powerful model, what will you choose to build in your second half? If you're ready to remodel your future, subscribe and join our sanctuary at Unordinary Mind. It's time to become the architect of your own life.